Apologies students for abruptly ending the previous video. These videos on this platform only allows me to record for 15 minutes at a time, after which I have to start a new video. So that's the reason it ended like that. So just to end off where I was, what we were talking about previously, I was talking about mental health of teachers. So this is a vital subject and a vital topic, not only for teachers, but for everybody. Within your personal capacity, in your professional capacity, your mental health is exceptionally important. As a teacher, there's an unwritten rule, you have a mandate as an individual and as a teacher to be a role model to your learners, even if you don't want to be. Whether we would want to accept it or not, or whether children would want to accept it or not, what they see their teachers, their parents, and other adults doing around them is what they inevitably are going to internalize and do as well. Sometimes children choose to do quite opposites, and the reason for them is rebelling against maybe what they're seeing, but definitely what children see is what they do. There's an African proverb that says, children may not listen to their elders, but they've never failed to copy their actions. I'm not saying it verbatim, but essentially what this talks about is the fact that children see what you do, and they do what you do, and not necessarily what you say. The ultimate point I would like to make here is that when children see you looking after your mental health, and that you value mental health as much as you value physical health, they are more inclined to do this as well. In the world we're living at the moment, right now, at the moment, the expression or the actions or the abilities that are external are seen as highly valuable. So if you are able to perform, if you're able to show people that you can complete a task, that is highly valuable, and therefore physical health is extremely important. So are you feeling healthy? Are you feeling okay? Mental health is slowly but surely gaining the same kind of respect as physical health is. And part of your role as a teacher is to teach your students that being mentally healthy and considering mental health in our choices or in our actions and in our considerations is exceptionally important. So part of this is for you to look after yourself as a teacher, as an individual, so that your learners can learn from you too. And of course, for you to reach out, mobilize support in the instances where you're not feeling okay and you just need some time, you just need some break, with a bit of a break, which is so important for teachers. And hopefully you'll be in positions where you have a very good principal or good support in terms of your colleagues or good support in terms of your family, that you are able to take a break, able to take a breather, even though in the world we live in today, it's virtually impossible to really take a break. But when you're not in a good place mentally, hopefully you have the possibility of just taking a step back, pulling yourself together, and then continuing as is necessary. Okay, so out of these 5 topics, the one that I want to focus on the most is the section or the little bubble around teachers. The reason for this is as we progress through educational psychology, we're going to be focusing a lot on the learners and a lot on what you need to observe in the classroom space rather than the skills you need to possess. So I want to talk a little bit in this video and the video to follow about the skills you need to possess, the characteristics, the situations that you can use to help build yourself. So we're going to take a little bit of a pause and focus on you as a teacher. Now, the one point that I think is vital for us to talk about is conflicts. And so conflict management is a skill that as teachers you really are required to have because you deal with conflicts in the classroom, conflicts with parents, with colleagues, with principals. And it's sometimes very difficult to know what to do. But if we understand, I'm hoping that if we talk about conflict in a way that we understand it and that we are able to differentiate between the types of conflict, this may be a bit helpful. I want to refer you to the article we did from Sonal Sharma. I'm using that as a guide to focus the next part of the video on. And so what we're going to do is just extract some of the work from there, and I'm going to discuss it in more detail. The first of which is conflict management. I want you to remember, as the researchers like Seneg, Kleiner, Roberts, Ross, and Smith talk about, teachers are the producers of the environment. They help to make the space conducive for learners to learn and for learners to talk about. So for learners to talk in rather, but when learners are anxious, when they're worried, when they stress about making mistakes, they're less likely to engage in academic learning and good academic work. So as a teacher, you need to be prepared for this. You need to know that we cannot ignore that if we don't have a good space, if we don't create a safe space, there's going to be conflict in an environment and will affect the learners' academic achievement. It will affect the retention of learners. So conflict management, at the end of the day, it's part of educational psychology because it deals with the ability of individuals to make decisions or to make choices that are suitable for them and enable them to do what they need to do. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about it in detail. So as I said, knowledge of conflict management, it helps teachers in the decision-making process. It also equips them in guiding their students to tackle any kind of situation that makes it difficult for them so that they can make a decision which is most beneficial for them and sometimes also for the other party. So this leads to an effective teaching and learning process. So as you can see, a conflict management is around the mental state of indecision. This causes painful and unpleasant experiences for a person. And you say at the end of it, a conflict literally means, or conflict is defined as a state of indecision. And the state of indecision causes pain and causes unpleasantness. So when we think of conflict, oftentimes we think of conflict between two people, but conflict can also be in one individual. It can cause emotional tension for you as a person because you are facing a conflict between two decisions and not necessarily with another person. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking about conflict in terms of you as the individual, because you can take, when you learn how to deal with conflict within yourself, it's then easier to then deal with it outside of yourself. Okay, so according to Fernald, the tension or stress involved when making decisions or making different types of decisions that may be equally attractive or unattractive to you is what really causes that feeling of anxiety and stress within yourself. Conflict is a state of confusion for an individual where your desires are maybe difficult to achieve, or you're unsure of how to step forward to be able to make a choice between two opposing wishes or desires. And you basically stay or remain within a state of confusion. So I'm going to be talking about the general or three types of confusion for an individual, and you can see it on the diagram in front of you. We'll be talking about the approach conflict, or it can also be called the double approach conflict. We'll be talking about the approach avoidance conflict and then the double avoidance conflict. Okay, so I'm going to start with the double approach conflict, and this is conflict when a person or within a person when they need to make a decision about two goals, but both of these goals are appealing. So as you can see, it's called a positive situation. So there's two positives. So to give you an example, perhaps you're deciding on where to go on holiday. So you're deciding on a vacation spot, and you like both Turkey and you like Spain. Both are positives, both are quite appealing, but it's difficult because you now have a conflict within yourself. Which one do I choose? Usually this type of conflict is typically resolved when there's a movement towards one of the goals, so it makes it easy to make a final decision. So for example, if you find that there are flights to Turkey that are on sale, so it's cheaper, this might be a movement towards one of the goals. So it makes it easier for you to make a decision because there seems to be something that tips the scales in the favor of one choice, which is Turkey in this example, rather than the other choice, which is Spain. So this helps you then to deal with the conflict that you're facing, and maybe it'll then be easier for you to make the decision. The next one we'll talk about is the approach avoidance conflict. This usually occurs when the person is faced with a decision, or you need to pursue or avoid something that has an advantage and disadvantages. So you need to think about making this decision. What are the disadvantages and what are the advantages for myself? And so when you are faced with this, what do? You can look at your two choices, you can make a list, and you can see, look, at the end of the day, what exactly are the advantages or the pros and cons of the one decision and what is the other, and then you weigh the options up and you see which one would be more desirable and will be better for you. And so it does cause a lot of stress because you have to go back and forth between this decision making until you're finally able to then make your choice dependent on what you find in the analysis of the two choices. The last one is the double avoidance conflict, and this refers to making a decision between two equally undesirable choices. So like a very basic example of this could be if you need to do your homework or you need to do things for your work or your job as well. So these are two, you need to decide which one do I do first. Both is not something you necessarily want to do because you may just want to be laying on the couch watching Netflix, but you need to make a decision. So in this case, it will be two equally undesirable choices. And usually when we're dealing with this type of conflict, and I'm thinking of how we would apply it in the classroom, if a child approached you and said, look, miss, I have these two choices to make, neither of which I want to make, but I have to make it. You then can help them in a way by making, for example, a chart and saying, okay, so let's look at these two choices. What are the negatives? Which one has less negatives? Now let's make a different list. What are your goals and your objectives? So which one of these choices will best help you achieve the goals that you've identified? So in this way, we can use conflict management to help the individual deal with internal conflict. We can also then use this type of strategies to also help with external conflict or conflict between individuals. It may also be helpful there. So this is a very essential, a vitally important actually skill that a teacher should have is dealing with conflict, because you're also going to have conflict between yourself and colleagues, yourself and the principal, perhaps parents, even between between students in your classroom. You therefore have to be ready to deal with conflict at any point. So this is the reason I decided to extract conflict management specifically from the reading. We are now going to be focusing on quite a number of elements that are important for teachers to think about and to know. It's going to be a bit tedious to go through all of it. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but mention what I feel is important for us to know. Okay, so educational psychology also encourages the teacher in some of the ways that I've outlined on this slide from as supported by the information from the article by Sonal Sharma. So the first of which is an important one. The first way in which you need to understand and consider your learners is in terms of their development. So knowing the development of an individual is vital because, as we know, a human being passes through different stages of development. Besides just knowing about infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and then later on adulthood, we also need to know what are those stages that a child has passed through to get to the point where they are now within my classroom. In terms of development, have they been sufficiently supported to go through each of these stages and to be able to be in a space where they can sit in my classroom and be prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, socially to be in this space. So knowing or understanding the development will help you to see if your students are ready to be in the classroom where you are wanting them to be, and also for them to be at the level where they are able to meet the requirements. And lastly, of course, for you to identify when red flags exist because you understand development and you understand how they should be developing. The next one is knowing your learner. Very important and also quite simple to understand. Knowing your learner, having and building a relationship with them does improve in the teaching and learning process. Knowing the students' interests, knowing their learning capacity, how creative they are, their usual behavior, their motivation, it helps you to know where your learner is at any point on any day. If you usually have a child who is very happy-go-lucky, always ready to help, always ready to be involved, and you notice that their behavior has changed, this of course can be an indicator to you that something else is going on that you perhaps need to be dealing with before you can even get to the content for the day. We've once again very quickly reached the end of our 15-minute period for this video. I'll be discussing the rest of these points in the video that follows. I'll also be providing some examples for you to just really put this into perspective for yourself as a teacher in training.